Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. And do we have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Move to adopt tonight's agenda as it reads.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? So that motion passes. And the next thing we're going to do is have a council liaison update, please.
I'm not positive we're recording. I just brought the meeting up on YouTube and I got a black screen.
Thank you very much, Brian.
Grace and I have received no training on this, so I'm just looking at the thing that says recording.
Is there a spot to unmute on there by chance, or to tap the recording?
Microphones are not crossed through like they're silent.
It's recording. YouTube just isn't up, but it is being
Okay.
recorded right now.
Okay, well, good,
Okay, so you believe it is recording? Great.
Yeah, so it is
Thank you.
recording.
good enough then, I guess. Good evening, Planning Commission members. I'm Brian Mundell, your City Council Liaison. Some updates. Members of City Council chose to fire Rod Snell from the Fire Chief position. In the meantime, while we are without Chief, Jerry Stretch from Capstone was engaged and hired to act as interim fire chief and to assist in bringing in a new fire chief. He's a fire department consultant. Council discussed the barn dominium ordinance again and sent it back to staff for review. Council will review it hopefully just once more. Then it should come to planning and zoning for the public hearing and review. The variance for the second driveway on 2/29th that was discussed at our last meeting was approved by council at the last meeting. We have a spring town hall meeting that has been scheduled for April 26th at 6 p.m. Booster Day is coming up in July. Volunteers are needed. Could be just for 1 hour, or if you're generous, it could be for the whole day. Could be to help set up the evening before or the morning of, or to help take stuff down after the celebration. If anyone's interested, visit the volunteers page at eastbethelboosterdays.com. Are there any questions or comments?
So there were some other items on our agenda last meeting. The sheep thing.
That was approved.
Okay.
Everything was approved from the
Oh,
last
okay.
meeting. I'll just say that.
Yeah, because I was watching the meeting and I guess I must have missed it. So there was, okay, thank you.
Yeah, that was approved.
Perfect.
Any from the audience? All right, well, until our next meeting, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, the next thing is the approval of minutes. If you've had a chance to take a look at them, are there any corrections?
I have 3.
I'm so surprised.
Just in case historians want to look these over and make sense of them. One thing is on page 2 of 3, line 51. It just says, Terry noted that he doesn't see any problems with setting a precedent, which to me is not quite enough information because it depends on the precedent. In this case, I'd like to add to that sentence, as it is a unique location at the end of a cul-de-sac.
Okay.
Thus providing a reason why I don't have a problem with setting a precedent.
Is somebody taking these down then?
Yeah, it wants to add that it's in a unique location at the end of the cul-de-sac.
Yeah, or being at the end of the cul-de-sac is the unique location aspect of it, but So there may be a comma after location. It is, as it is in a unique location, comma, at the end of a cul-de-sac.
And I actually just happened to be listening to the meeting this morning, and that's almost exactly what you said, so
Okay.
it's good.
Then on line 56, it says, Terry noted that he would like to see the width of the driveway minimized, and I believe that wasn't me,
That was Corey.
that was
That was
Corey.
me.
You're right,
Yeah.
Corey. Well,
So
Yes.
it's just should change to Corey to be accurate. I think I agreed with you, but that was your point. And then finally, between line 76 and 79, it says, Terry noted he will be abstaining to a personal relationship with the Fagers, but then after that, I was corrected by somebody who is city staff, I believe. or the
yeah,
law-
Mr. Look
Right,
actually explained
who
it.
said that I don't have to abstain, so then I actually voted A in favor. So you could either add the bit that it was informed that I did not need to abstain, or you could strike that whole line, but I did vote A, or I, on that one.
Thank you.
That's how I have. And there was plenty.
And Corey, do you have any?
Yeah, that was in 79. That's what I had. That you abstained and you didn't.
Right.
Oh, yeah, because it does say on 79 that you did abstain and you didn't, because we needed you for the quorum.
Right.
Yep,
Okay.
got those changes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so those are the corrections before we close our discussion on the minutes. I noticed that the minutes were much more brief than usual. And I know that we're not going to do verbatim, but I think that there were some points that were made that, kind of main points that were made that weren't included. I mean, are you in agreement?
I'm
Larry?
in agreement with that.
A little more context definitely makes it go a long way. You
Yeah,
can always
to
go back and
see
reference
why
video,
these-
but
Yeah, to see why these questions are,
Yeah,
the
it's hard.
recommendations were made.
as somebody who was absent, it's hard for me to go back and see what the idea behind said things versus the outcome.
Exactly.
Yeah, in the previous month, they were very thorough, I thought. So
Mhm.
I did notice a difference.
Mhm. So it's just a comment.
Yeah, I'll pass that along to Administrator Look. We use a service
Mhm.
for the minutes, and I don't know if it was the same person or why, but I will pass that along.
Exactly. Yeah, it could have just been a different person doing it. Okay, so with that, do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make
Go ahead.
a motion to approve the amended minutes.
I'll second that.
Okay, and all in favor say aye. Aye. And you're abstaining?
I'm abstaining as I
Okay.
was not present.
Right. Okay, so that passes. And then the next thing on the agenda,
Madam Chair, if I
Yes.
could just say for just context, you do not have to abstain because you weren't here. You could still review the minutes, so just for future reference, but I do have you abstaining on this.
thank you very much for that. So then, since we didn't have 4 people voting on it, it's still fine because of the minutes.
Yep, and you still have the 3. You don't have the other 2 seats filled right now, so I think you're okay with that.
Yeah, it falls under the majority rule.
Okay.
Because they're vacant seats.
I really appreciate your guidance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we're gonna have a public hearing now, and Ms. Lindell is going to set it up for us.
Yes, Madam Chair, before we move to the public hearing, if I may have the floor to introduce your new city planner, Grace
Please.
Gerard. As you know, I was here last month, I'm the consulting city planner while the city ramps up after planning staff left. But Grace started 3 weeks ago, and so it's been my pleasure to onboard her relative to the planning things, not so much the technology things. And she will be your primary contact in terms of the packets you saw came from her. So I don't know if you'd like her to say hello, but I wanted to introduce y'all to her this evening.
Please do. And would you like to say anything?
Yeah, so my name is Grace. I just graduated from the U of M, and I'm very excited to be here. I grew up in the North Metro, and I've wanted to be a city planner ever since I found out it was a job, so I'm really honored to be here and work with you all and get to serve the residents of East Bethel. So looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Welcome. And so will you be working most closely with us then, rather than the community development director?
Yeah.
When that person is placed?
I have not talked with Matt about that. Right now with Kendra on staff, we've been kind of working together on it. I think as I get more settled in, I'll be in contact with you guys more. So yes, yeah, I'll get that cleared up with Matt going forward.
Okay, so communication will come between you and us then directly?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
that is okay, yeah.
Perfect.
And I know we've got and again, welcome, congratulations, good luck.
Thank you.
And I know I was not here at the last meeting and didn't see anything in there. Were we waiting until seats were filled to make any changes, or who, what, where? Up
Right,
there?
we discussed it just real briefly last month. So as for the chairperson,
Yeah.
we talked about it and said we would just kind of let it go, and we were thinking that maybe this month we would have people to interview, but I heard from either Grace or Mr. Look that that we will be interviewing people next month, so April. So then that will go to the city council. So it will probably be May before we have a full
Body.
yeah. And yeah, if you want to.
No, I have no
discuss-
opposition, I just wanted to know where we had left it.
Yeah, that's where we
since I hadn't
left
been back since December with January's meeting canceled. And
So, and I'm fine either way. I'm fine if you guys want another chairperson until, we have a full body, or whichever.
To be honest, if it was open and at the time, and although it's not on the agenda, I would have just nominated you to stay where you're at and continue doing the job well
Yeah.
that you're doing, and
Sure, until.
into this, given the current year. And again, it's not like we haven't ran a consecutive before, and
Exactly. I mean, we did the same thing with you in
absolutely.
COVID, and we were kind of in and out and everything. So, yeah, I'm happy to do it for a couple months.
Yeah, like I said, just getting caught up on it since
Yeah.
we didn't have any open item on here, but
Are you okay with that?
Yep, that's what we decided last
Okay,
meeting.
good. Okay,
Thank
thank
you
you
for the
for bringing
update.
that up.
Discuss.
moving on to item 5.
Perfect.
Thank you everyone for your patience.
Yes, this is a public hearing tonight for a site plan and a conditional use permit to allow a second building at 18750 Ulysses Street. The applicant is Classic Construction, and the property is guided and zoned light industrial. You can see the location of the property on the screen. The applicant is requesting approval for a second building. The original approval on this lot did show conceptually in the future that a second building would be added, so that was in the concept plan, so this is not a surprise. This is the existing building. This is the proposed new building on the north side of the lot. And we'll talk a little bit about the loading docks. They're relocating some of the utility equipment, but we'll have a shared drive and a shared truck bay in between the two buildings. And you can see that a little better on this image here. This is the existing building on Ulysses, and then the other street here has another access. The access to this new building would come in off Ulysses. Like I said, shared truck court, some employee parking here on the east side of the building as well as on the west side of the building. And then a little bit on the south side before you get into this truck, truck bay in this location. It is tucked down a little bit, but is not fully screened by wing walls. And that's something that is going to need to be addressed. Talk a little bit about that on the next page. The applicant is proposing landscaping by relocating some landscaping, and as I talk about in the staff report and on a future screen, we simply need to make sure that between the two buildings on the lot, the landscaping is met. We've asked for an updated landscape plan. If it doesn't meet it, it'll be fairly simple to meet it, but we just need to confirm the landscaping requirements. The ordinance includes 10 general standards for conditional use permits and additional standards for site plan approval. Both of these types of uses are allowed uses provided the applicant meets the standards in the code. And we find that they have met the standards. We have not, just the timing of this with, I think, spring break and some other things, we have not received the engineer's comments. So I'm hopeful that we will receive those next week and have those when it goes to the council for action. But we have included a condition simply stating that they will need to comply with any engineering comments. The landscaping, like I said, 2 conditions. The landscaping must include the entire lot to verify compliance with our ordinance requirements. I discussed that in the staff report. And then the loading areas do need to be screened from the public right-of-way. So wing walls, like those on the existing building, if you drove out to the site, the wing wall is that wall that screens the loading dock. It's just a freestanding wall. That would need to be added to the second building in order to comply with the ordinance. With that, we have provided in your packet a draft resolution with findings of fact and conditions for approval based on the finding that the applicant has met the ordinance standards. However, if after the public hearing tonight, the commission finds that they do not, then you could recommend denial. But again, in your packet is a draft resolution with findings of fact and conditions of approval. Happy to answer any substantive questions before you open the public hearing.
Okay, that was very short. Thank you.
You know what? I don't know the other planners, but I'm pretty short because I figure you guys got a big packet to read over the weekend.
That was great. Thank you. So I'm going to open the public hearing, and what I'd like to do is ask anybody who would like to speak that is not the owner of the property, come up. So if you're a neighbor, another business or something, please come up and speak. And looks like no one's coming up, so then if someone from Classic could come up, please. If you could please just tell us your name and your address.
Kurt Strandlin, Classic Construction, 18542 Ulysses Street, Northeast.
Okay, and Kurt, what would you like to tell us?
I'm in agreement with everything. I do have some concerns of the screen walls along the dock. The screen walls on the existing building, that's a one-purpose building. So we have a front entry to that building. This is a multi-tenant building, and I feel if we were to screen the building, it would not give adequate access or visibility to 2 separate tenants, because the easter tenant would be directly behind a wall. And this building won't have trucks in the loading dock at all times. You know, they'll be dropping off and leaving, and we don't have an exact tenant yet. You know, we're hoping there's a need for a lease building in East Bethel, because there's really nothing like this. And I'd like to hear some of your thoughts, I guess, on that piece of the request.
Have you spoken with staff about that?
We have not, no.
Okay.
It appears and this could be the same on the other side, I'd have to take a closer look on site. By the images, it appears the loading dock area is a bit recessed. Is that the same on the other side of the building, or the first building?
Well, that's a little different scenario because the whole building is built up. It's
Yep.
cross docking, so that both sides are roughly 44 inches above pavement.
Yeah, and I guess I'm trying to see if that let's say, would suffice for part of the protection of, blocking when there is trucks and loading. The fact that it's recessed, it's kind of already offsetting some of the look from that. So to your point, keeps it open from having to have a winged wall.
Yes, it is recessed 44 inches. You wouldn't see the wheels or any of that. You'd see from the side of the trailer to
Yeah.
the top.
So slightly guarded and protected from observation, and obviously from one direction, the winged wall on building 1 is going to provide some of that similar cover,
Correct. Yeah.
unless you're staring at it head on.
As you're making the turn onto
Ulysses.
Ulysses.
Yep.
correct, yep.
Okay.
What's your schedule for this?
We're getting through this process, and we plan on getting going yet this season. So.
Okay. I am kind of concerned about the issue with the wing walls, especially since you haven't had a chance to talk with staff about it. Were you aware of that before or up until just today?
No, we've seen it just when we received this packet.
Okay.
Yes, we've built the majority of them buildings in that community, and we have a couple other dock scenarios that aren't screened. The right of way, I guess it's depending on, if you're looking at it, which is the front of the building, I guess, for instance, the building right next door, the Aggressive Hydraulics, has multiple docks on the new Buchanan Street side that there's no screening.
Yeah, I have to say that I was surprised, actually, too, when it was mentioned, but I am not an expert at this at all, so it was just surprising to me.
We've never had this request in any other city to screen the loading docks, so I guess it's a little new to us also.
Yeah, I guess personally, I'm not in favor of trying to force something that doesn't need to be there, that's not already.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
so this is not Kendra making up something.
No,
for
no,
fun.
no,
This is in
completely.
the code.
Yes,
Loading docks shall be screened from all lot lines and public roads. So the option to not screen it like the other building is to pause this, ask it to be tabled, and apply for a variance.
yeah.
If in fact the council has not required them for other projects here, which I don't know, I drove through here, I didn't notice that that was true. But if that is true, that might be findings for the variance. But you cannot just say, I don't think it matters.
Right.
They either have to comply with the condition in section 23 of the code or apply for a variance.
And this is why I do like you very much. because
Unfortunately,
you know your stuff.
again, I don't know the history in this subdivision, if it's true that there are others that didn't have to do it, whether they got a variance or not. But this is not a section that is a should is discretionary, shall is mandatory.
Right.
Was this design part of the original approved? Like, I know they said building 2 to be future. If the site plan was approved at that time without it,
The files that I've reviewed does not approve it, it simply says there's this future building. And it looks pretty similar location, but there were certainly no details about it. It was a site plan view in the file. I didn't see any architecture that was approved or any variances that were approved. So while I appreciate the comments, we have a couple different ways to do it. We can proceed with that as a condition and work together to find some way to screen it. It doesn't have to be a wing wall. That's the simplest way to do it at that loading dock where the drive goes down. That would be, in my opinion, the simplest. But there are other ways to screen it. Landscaping could be used. There are some other things perhaps that we could do. So unfortunately, I didn't hear that it was a concern before tonight, so we didn't have a time for us to
Right.
discuss it, but those are the couple of options that we have.
What would the height of them walls need to be extended to consider it being screened?
Well, as I read it, loading docks shall be screened, so I would say that those doors, if we go back to this, that's what we're talking about, is screening to this trim line, basically.
Is that what building 1 is screened to? The top of the loading doors with the existing wing wall in building 1?
No, and
I'm not certain how tall this is.
I guess the little more confusing piece is even that the whole 187th has multiple loading docks facing 187th, and we weren't screening them from the public right away.
Yeah, I don't know if the code changed, I don't know if there were variances, I only know what the code actually says.
Right.
So, if there's a history of not requiring screening, certainly that's something the Planning Commission and Council could take under advisement as part of a variance request. One option, since I haven't been contacted about this in advance, is to proceed with this condition, get approval with this condition, and come back later and ask for a variance. But you can't just waive a requirement that's in the code.
Kurt, how would you like to go forward? Are you able to spend a month kind of working this out with staff, or?
Bill, you got any input on that? Bill is with the ownership group.
Can I come up here and speak?
Please do. Just if you could please state your name and maybe your role in this also.
So, Bill Wright, so I'm the Fleet and Facilities Manager with Panagold Baking Company. And so I oversaw the project on building number 1 and been, worked closely with Kurt and everybody at Classic and looking at building number 2. So Kurt said before, so building number 1 is ours. It's our Country Hearth building, it's our trucks. We built the wing walls to hide our trucks that sit there overnight. But on building number 2, our hopes are to have 2 tenants. So we'd have someone here who would have a business and somebody here who would have a business. And if we built a screening wall, from the street, the business on the backside there would be covered. Nobody would be able to see it. So it would be an obstruction. And I don't think it would be aesthetically pleasing. I understand, that you've got what you've got for the, your rules, but I would like to discuss. If there are other buildings in the area that weren't required, I'd like to kind of, maybe we can take a look at that and see why. But if we were to put a wall here, to block all those docks, or put a wall here, you've created something that now kind of make it look ugly. It's not a nice looking building anymore. We wanted to, our first building, we built it so it blended with the neighborhood. The earth tones, the split face block that we chose, and then designing this building as well, so it would just blend in with the neighborhood and be a very nice looking building. So I would like to look at, if we do apply for a variance, what kind of a time frame, what studies need to be done? Do we go around the neighborhood and find other examples, or do we discuss options or something? But having a big wall, a big high wall right here, just, it's not, I think that if we were forced to do that when we got done building it, everybody'd look at it and go, wow, that just looks ugly. So.
Okay. So what would the timing of that be if they were to ask for a variance?
Madam Chair, so the burden of proof on a variance is on the applicant. So they would need to pull the materials together to identify why there's a practical difficulty that they cannot comply with the code.
Those 3 tests kind of thing?
Yes, there's a 3-pronged test, and I'm happy if that's the path they want to take to send the variance application to them. Variances come to the Planning Commission and then to the Council, and there is a notification requirement. Depending how quickly they turn the application around, we could be a little bit flexible. I think if you wanted to request as the applicant that this be tabled tonight and spent the next week putting your application together, this could come back next month. Again, the other option is to look for ways to comply with the screening requirements and proceed forward, or the third option is to proceed forward, get approval with the condition, and then come back later and ask for a variance. So It's really about putting together your application for why this is a hardship that you cannot comply with and should have a variance. And just to be clear, variances are not based on what somebody else did. So it's important to know that, but we would need to focus on the three-prong test. And I just don't have the history of this neighborhood that some of you all probably have to know if others were granted variances or if this section of code changed
Neither.
after those buildings.
Neither. Glenn and I have been here long enough. This has never come up in the past. So as far as the three-factor with the variance reasonable request, I would venture to say to be able to operate a business successfully is a reasonable request. It's not going to change the essential character of the neighborhood, which is the third factor, and then the uniqueness, if something that's out of your control would be the challenge question to try to get answered in the world of variance requests. Although, as I've been corrected numerous times up here, it's not a legal requirement that you have to pass the three-factor test for something to be approved. It's highly suggested, but
Yeah, it's funny, I mean, because one of the things
it's
is.
real.
Yeah, I know. One of the things is the uniqueness of your property too, right, is one of the three.
yeah, that's
And so you have to prove how your property is kind of unique as to why you wouldn't be able to comply with that thing.
What is the definition of screening? Is that spelled out somewhere for us?
well, that's
So we
kind of
could-
where I was.
So we could decide if it does fit. Screening to the top of the doors would be creating several issues. It would just
And-
fill up with snow and, I mean, that'd be like, then we'd almost be able to put a roof over it or something.
And Kendra, is that your interpretation that it needs to go to the top of the doors, or that's specifically in our code?
That's my interpretation of 30 years of planning in a lot of different cities. I'm looking to see if we define screening. Where we don't define it, we use Webster's dictionary.
Is it something?
Screening simply says, screening includes earth mounds, berms, ground forms, fences, walls, or landscaping used in combination to block visual access to an object throughout the year.
So if we were to say something along the lines of within the landscape plan and the green space that you have on this image, in an effort to screen said area may be applicable.
So since it's not explicitly worded in the code, we could have an interpretation of our own interpretation, an agreeable interpretation of an acceptable screen.
That's how I
Yes,
view
this
it.
is not acceptable screening as proposed on the site plan today, but as I said, if you want, or as the chair said, if you want to work with staff to come up with a plan that screens it, absolutely. I think the simplest is to do what you did on the other building, but if that doesn't work, you could come up with other things to screen the loading docks. That's what the code says. We should not be designing it for them at this table, nor should we be writing their variance application for them. But I am more than happy to work with you outside of this room to come up with a way to meet the code or to help you put together your variance application. And again, if we had chatted before tonight, we might have had something to present tonight, but we cannot do that here.
Totally understood. I think that it might be a good idea, unfortunately, to spend the next month with you working with staff and bringing something that is acceptable to staff and to Ms. Lindahl. Not that you need to approve or anything, but you're a great resource of what is in the code and what isn't in the code. And so you could bring a package that we can just say yes. I mean, I thought this was going to be so easy tonight.
Yeah, I agree, just because of,
Yeah.
I mean, surrounding areas and, I guess it's a little hard for us to tell you what we want to do without knowing
What's needed.
The parameters
Yeah,
are.
because if it's building walls to the top of them doors, I would suggest telling them that it doesn't make sense to build this building and to try to lease it.
Yeah.
You know, we work with our customers, we want to see them be successful also, and I just, I could see maybe some screening trees out front you know, in some in that island area. But if we're handling the landscaping and additional trees with a new landscaping plan, is there a way we can do that with this screening piece?
On that,
Like, that we present something to you, we don't know what we gotta present. Because if it's like I just mentioned, we're not gonna present that because it,
well, if I could, and
Yeah,
and politely disagree on the plan moving, or on your idea of moving forward, I think I would rather see, if the body's wish was to recommend approval with the screening condition to keep the ball rolling,
that's what I'm.
and use, at least at the moment, the loose interpretation, and as things get defined, and if all of a sudden a variance request does need to be done as a result of said definitions, descriptions, so forth, or if we're able to do it with the looseness that we have in our current ordinance with some type of screening with the updated landscape plan, for me, and again, I'm not trying to write it for you, but that's what I think, I know something I would be in favor of seeing if that solved the purpose, because again, not trying to reinvent the wheel, let alone be outside of the characteristic based on the past precedent that we've had without true definition. That, respectfully, Kendra.
But I am concerned about recommending approval and it being approved and then needing a variance and somehow getting stuck in the variance.
Well, no, I'm saying approve it with the screening
With the
condition.
condition, yeah.
Basically, as it were,
Right.
I want to say, irregardless of what they have, just not based on the image that we have today, but with the condition of screening as per the code. That keeps everything still rolling forward, and if a greater interpretation is needed, or if they have something, and by the time it gets to city council, then they have that option at that time. But if there's a major enough roadblock, then it could come back on a variance, but that keeps everything still rolling. We're not doing anything out of compliance. They're not doing anything out of compliance. It's actually moving forward as if any other opportunity would have came here and this would not have been brought to a greater attention outside of the landscape design. Am I interpreting it similar?
That's, you know, I think that's the thought process I had, is we present both of them with our new plan or idea.
Yeah.
And if it does get rejected, then we have to go to the next step of a variance. If we can't come up with a
Viable
screening solution that is satisfactory to both the building owners and the planning
Yeah.
commission and council.
Personally, from my perspective, what I see with the wing wall on the first building actually does 90% of the screening already, so again,
For
if
the
I,
second
That's
window.
what I was
yeah,
gonna.
toward the second, that's how I view it when I look at it.
That's what I was gonna ask, is if we're talking the right of way here, you know, vehicle, you're looking at, you know, a vehicle from there, you got the corner of the building that's being blocked. Here, you're still got the corner of the building being blocked. And here, you've got our wing wall, so it's just a gap of
Yeah, which
that
would,
right there. That's the gap we're talking about of that
yeah,
short.
the entrance essentially.
Right, yeah.
Or 4 feet, like the other option is to try to mirror the wing wall, the 4 feet off the front corner of the building where you've got the patch of grass to match the same winged wall, just to create that, because otherwise, yeah, then you're blocking the driveway otherwise.
Right, because what I'm saying in your ordinance is you're blocking the dock from the right of way.
If you could stand by the microphone, please.
Oh, sorry.
Because they
I'm
get
saying
this
when
in the
you're-
minutes.
You're in your ordinance, blocking the docks from the right of way. Is that what it states?
Yeah, the loading docks must be screened from the public right-of-way and property lines. And so the staff resolution is just that they be screened. We did, just to be clear, we didn't say it needed to be wing walls. That's the easiest way to do it, but there's other ways to do it, as you're working through now.
Yeah, I guess looking at the existing wing wall that's on building 1 and the building itself from the right of way, outside of, again, what is that, maybe 12 feet off the building is the end of the grass before the driveway, or entrance into the common space between the two. I don't know what more screening really is there from my perspective.
That's what I'm asking.
Is the screening, if them were just the garage doors and it wasn't a recessed loading dock then is,
Specifically, it's the section in the code, and this was in the March 3rd letter as well, but specifically is for loading docks from public streets or right-of-ways. So I think there are lots of options to work through that. I think it's fair to say that part of that screening probably does get accomplished. If I was working with the applicant, I would work with my architect to do some cross sections to show what I can do with landscaping to screen that loading dock and avoid the wing wall.
Okay. Mr. Terry?
I was just going to say that my recollection on screening in other projects was 6 feet would be the height. I don't know if that's spelled out in code, but I just remember that being a number that was used in the past. Also, as far as to Tanner's point of approving it with those conditions of being met, it's very similar to the engineering. The engineering hasn't been answered and we can't respond to that yet, but we usually would say with the engineering requests being met. So it'd be the same.
And screening.
Right, so we just add screening.
And like I said, that
Maybe-
goes back to moving it forward.
Right.
will,
Corey, did you have anything that you want to add?
No, just, I guess I'm a little
Any
bit, to
questions?
Kendra, I guess. Can we approve it that way?
Yeah, that's the way the resolution on page 10 of the packet is drafted, that it says loading docks must be screened as required in section 23-1 subdivision G of the zoning ordinance. It doesn't tell them how they have to do it, just that they have to do it.
Okay.
So I think there's plenty of time if they want to work with staff to get something put together before the council meeting. And we can certainly talk about moving that forward that way. That is the same as the condition 4 is the applicant shall satisfy any and all comments from the city engineer prior to issuance of building permit. So I'm
I'd say
quite
it's-
confident that they can comply without a variance, but if in fact they find that they can't, they still have that option to come back.
Kurt, so are you okay with that then, of working with staff? And were there any other concerns that you had in this process?
nope, just the loading dock. And
Yep.
I guess maybe we'll work with them on clarification of heights and, you know, it's partially screened now with it nearly 4 feet in the ground.
Yeah.
So what if we gotta get to that 6 feet, we could probably work with them walls that high and not
2 foot
block-
shrub on the grass and now you're at 6 feet and.
Or on top of the, you know, if we added on to these walls, we already have concrete walls, we could
Oh.
add something.
Oh, yeah.
To get to the 6 feet if it's from the height that the trailers are parked.
Yeah, they have in a drawing just handrail, like 3 feet
Yeah, that's for safety.
for
so somebody
safety. And
can-
so if it was like a wall,
Stem wall, that's what I was gonna, ask if there, you know,
yeah,
since it's not
That one
specifically stated in the ordinance,
would
if,
bring it up a lot more coverage.
can you go back to the picture, actually the rendering?
You're kind of right where I need to see the arrow.
Oh.
Okay, and then if you could come up to the microphone again.
17, I think was the page.
Yeah.
All right, so not to block your view.
You're
No,
okay.
You want me at the microphone, but that's all right, you can see that, all right. So if we were to figure out, like say, instead of having the railing there, some kind of a stem wall that matched the building, and how far out would we required to go and how far up, and then it would, you know, it wouldn't block what we all wanna do is just build a big wall that blocks, our tenant on the other side, because they're gonna have, you know, whoever they're gonna have, they're gonna wanna not be hidden back there, so if we had, like here, we built, you know, we had something that blended right in, if we were able to have a short stem wall on top of that, and you say, Kurt said we're already 4 feet down, you know, 6 feet if you're able to come out so far and design it where it kind of blended in with the building.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
those
to
things
come
you could
out-
just work with
It can
staff
only
on
be
that.
16 inches, I believe.
I think you're moving in the right direction.
Yeah,
You know, so you'd have to come out that far, so people couldn't fall over. 16 inches is the drop you can have.
Okay.
Per code, we would need a 3-foot rail on the top side of that.
Right.
For people stepping off, so if we can come up with a stem wall or something and then a short piece of rail.
And a few trees, it would look good.
Okay, well, either of you have anything else that you want to express to us or concerns? If,
I guess maybe future clarify that screening of them docks and what, I've never seen a dock screen to the height of the top of the doors. So, you know,
No, I'm with you.
I think maybe that'd be helpful for future projects.
and maybe yours will clarify it for future people, right?
We'll let you
So-
know when that meeting happens.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
I thank you both for your patience with us, and we want to give this a full discussion because it's really important to you, and you're important to us, too. Okay. So that public hearing is closed, and do we have any discussion among ourselves?
I have one thing. When Kendra presented this, it was mentioned parking for employees, but it wasn't mentioned anything about parking for sales or customers. Does that meet the whatever parking requirements currently?
It does. The site has actually more parking than our code requires. The site, the plans show 36 stalls where 33 is required.
Excellent. That's all I had on that.
Good catch. Gentlemen?
Nothing else.
Tanner?
I would make a motion approving the site plan and granting conditional use permit for the second building on property located at 18750 Ulysses Street Northeast, East Bethel, Minnesota, pin 323323210017, with the conditions as described tonight to meet engineering requirements and screening.
That's a great motion.
I'll
Is there a
second.
second? Second, okay.
Thank you, Glenn.
Any more discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and opposed, so that motion passes. Well, thank you again for your patience. And Kendra, are you okay with everything here right now?
Yes. Yeah, I think it's good for Grace to hear this discussion as well. So, I mean, sometimes there are code updates that are needed. I don't honestly think our screening is different from other cities, but I think it's telling that it's a surprise to the planning commission. So there's
We haven't
some
had that many.
history. There's some history here. So no, we have good direction, and we'll work with the applicant between now and the council meeting to, I think there's a solution in this case to
Agreed.
move forward, so.
Good night.
And I would motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and opposed, no.